The riots in France have gradually subsided since July 4th. According to the expression of French President Macron when he held a meeting at the Élysée Palace, the peak period of the French riots has passed. Looking at the numbers, I found that this evaluation is basically objective. The riots in France started from June 28 to July 2nd. The police arrested a total of 3,200 people across the country, with an average of more than 600 arrests per day. However, from the night of July 3rd to the morning of July 4th, only 72 people were arrested, about a little more than one-tenth of the average daily number of arrests in previous days. It seems that the peak period of the riots seems to have really passed. According to incomplete statistics, in this riot, more than 200 commercial entities were looted, 300 bank outlets were burned down, 250 tobacco stores were destroyed, 5,900 cars were burned, 12,000 rubbish bins were burned, and 1,100 buildings were destroyed. Arson or vandalism, 270 attacks on the police, with a total loss of more than 1 billion euros. So, what magic did France use this time to make the peak of the riots pass overnight? Do they have any secrets, brilliant tricks, or big killers? Actually no. While they were trying to quell the unrest, as they had been doing for the past few days, they added a very simple trick on the night of July 3rd, disconnect the internet. The internet is disconnected, there is no internet, social platforms cannot be opened, and information cannot be seen, so people can no longer see the nonsense about inciting riots, and the bloody scenes of the so-called police suppressing the people. Those who want to continue the riot, want to discuss the meeting place and method on the internet, but there is no way to discuss it. So, a few days ago, more than 600 people were arrested every day. After the internet was disconnected, only more than 70 people were arrested, and the number of people arrested was only one-tenth of that before. You say, is it simple? Yesterday a friend looked at me suspiciously after listening to me expressing such emotions, and then asked me, did the disconnection of the internet really play such a big role? I saw something wrong with the way he looked at me, so I was a little flustered. So I calmed down a bit, organized my thoughts, and said to him so rigorously, anyway, as far as I know, from the night of July 3rd to the morning of July 4th, the methods that France could use to control the riots were all a few days ago. I have used them all, and the only way to increase is to cut off the internet. Anyway, I have never heard that the heavenly soldiers and generals have descended to help the French government control the riots, nor have I heard that their gods have appeared, and I have never heard that aliens are relatives of French President Macron helped Macron quell riots. That's why I came to such a conclusion. After I finished speaking, I was still not at ease, and then added, if you think it is not, then you can find out the reason and share it with me. In short, according to my existing logical thinking ability, the only reason I can find is this one, and that is the disconnection of the internet. Since the effect of disconnecting the network is so miraculous, let's continue to do logical reasoning. Once the internet is disconnected, the riots will subside. In other words, the internet must be an important driving force behind the riots. Is there anything wrong with this logical analysis? If there is nothing wrong with it, let's continue to ask, what are those social platforms on the French internet? In fact, there is nothing special, that is, Facebook, Twitter, Ins, etc. In short, they are all familiar to us. They have a common label, that is, they are all American platforms. China's WeChat, Taoxiao, etc., have never heard of them being widely used in France. In fact, as far as the world is concerned, there are only two countries with large-scale social platforms, one is the United States and the other is China. Although other countries, including Europe and Russia, have similar platforms, they have little influence. When we discuss major events, if there is no special information to support them, they can basically be ignored. With that said, allow me to draw a link between the riots in France and the United States. Friends don't have to guess, what I mean by this is obvious. I just want to say that the United States fanned the flames of the riots in France. That's all I mean, nothing else, and we don't hide it. Some friends may be puzzled. The United States and France are allies. If the United States incites riots in China or Russia, it is logically understandable. It seems difficult to understand that the United States incites riots in France. You say this, which shows that you have a normal concept of enemy and friend, a normal division of camps, and a normal logical reasoning, but you have overlooked a very important detail. That is, in recent months, French President Macron has always sang against the United States. On April 6, Macron visited China. In fact, the visit to China alone is not considered to be against the United States. The most terrible thing is what he said when he visited China. I don't know if I don't look at it, but I'm startled when I see it. For example, about the Taiwan Strait issue, which is the most concerned topic for us Chinese. After finishing his visit to China on April 9, Macron accepted an interview with the European edition of the American political news network on his way back to France by special plane. He said, Europe must reduce its dependence on the United States and avoid getting involved in the Taiwan issue between the United States and China confrontation. This is simply a clear-cut anti-Americanism, and its performance is not as good as half that of Japan and South Korea. You know, Japan is just a dog of the United States, and France is still a friend of a friend, a friend of a friend. In the end, the performance of a friend is not as good as a dog. The dog said in this question that whatever happens in the Taiwan Strait is what happens to Japan. And Macron's statement fully shows that this former handsome guy and now old handsome guy is repeating the theory he has promoted since 2016, Europe's strategic autonomy. This is indeed a clear political view after Macron's visit to China, not to say polite words or beautiful words. If you don't believe me, the headline of the report on Macron's interview published by the US political news network is, Macron says Europe must stand against being the pressure of American followers. It is said that the pressure to follow the United States is set. Isn't this a rebellious bone on the head? The article also said that Macron believes that France may lead the implementation of the European strategic autonomy theory, thus becoming the third superpower. Please pay attention to the word leading, which means that France should carry the flag and take the lead in this matter. In short, since Macron called out for European strategic autonomy in 2016, he seems to have stopped talking about it in the past few years due to the new crown epidemic. After the outbreak of the Russia-Ukraine conflict, he did not listen to what he said. Anyway, recently he has been passionate about this European strategic autonomy became suddenly interesting. Before the report just mentioned, that is, during Macron's visit to China, when he accepted an exclusive interview with the French newspaper Les Echos, he also said that Europe must have strategic autonomy. He emphasized that Europe must further promote strategic autonomy. What specific goals should be achieved? That is to become the third level besides China and the United States. He also made it clear that this is to prevent European countries from becoming vassals. Who's vassal? Everyone in the world knows that Europe must be prevented from becoming a vassal of the United States. Well, France doesn't want to listen to the United States, and wants to be independent. I don't want to be a vassal of the United States, but to become the third pole besides the United States and China. These statements are the exact words of Macron. It seems that Macron is now revisiting strategic autonomy, which is for real. If you suspect he's just lip service, here's one more thing. On June 6, the British Financial Times reported that NATO plans to set up an office in Japan in the next year. The news is great. The reason for the outbreak of the Russia-Ukraine conflict is that NATO expanded eastward to the side of Russia. But no matter what you say, Russia is in Europe after all, very close to NATO countries, and some are still next to each other. How far is China from Europe, and NATO is out of reach, but if NATO crosses thousands of mountains and rivers to set up an office in Japan, wouldn't that be NATO expanding eastward to the periphery of China? Then look at Macron's reaction to this matter. The response was simple, no. He said NATO, the Transatlantic Security Alliance, should continue to focus on its own North Atlantic region rather than the Asia-Pacific region, and he expressed concern that NATO was so out of focus. What is loss of focus? That is not doing business. What does Macron think is the business of NATO? No matter what it is in the North Atlantic region anyway, not in the Asia-Pacific region. This is similar to China's view. Of course it is different. China's point of view is that NATO does not need to exist at all, because it was dealing with the Soviet Union back then. The Soviet Union has disintegrated. You are still dealing with a ghost. Why don't you disband? Then guess what kind of mood the old man Biden is after seeing the statement made by the handsome old man Macron? You know, in NATO, if you have to rank the top two and the third by country, then the United States will rank first, and the second. The British think he is second, and the French think he is second. No matter how bad it is, France can also be ranked third behind the United Kingdom. That is the core leadership of NATO. If you still don't believe that Macron really wants to engage in European strategic autonomy, then look at another thing. We all know that the 15th BRICS summit will be held in Johannesburg, South Africa from August 22 to 24. The French newspaper reported on June 12 that Macron had a phone call with South African President Cyril Ramaphosa, the rotating presidency of the BRICS countries, at the beginning of this month and proposed the idea of participating in the current BRICS summit. This news is also a bit shocking, right? As a typical representative of Western countries, France actually wants to participate in the BRICS summit. The BRICS summit, an organization with China and Russia as its pillars, is a thorn in the side and a thorn in the flesh of the United States. When some African media reported on this incident, they bluntly said that South African President Cyril Ramaphosa was quite surprised by Macron's request. Don't think this news is fake. Agence France-Presse reported that French Foreign Minister Kalana said in Pretoria, the administrative capital of South Africa, on June 20 that French President Macron hopes to participate in the BRICS leadership meeting held in South Africa in August this year. People met for the 15th time. So this news is not nonsense from the media, it was confirmed by the French Foreign Minister himself. Of course, it may be difficult to realize Macron's wish, because Reuters reported on June 22 that Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Ryabkov said, for the BRICS summit, Macron is not suitable to be a guest. The Russian Deputy Foreign Minister also said, we have not concealed our position. We have informed our South African counterparts and hope our views will be fully accepted. Why did he tell South Africa? Because this year's BRICS summit is specifically organized by South Africa as the rotating presidency. According to the rules of the organization, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa will ultimately make the final decision. Under normal circumstances, Russia is firmly opposed to it, and there is a high probability that South Africa will not invite Macron to participate. However, Macron's intention to participate in the BRICS summit has been made clear to the world. Think about it, how angry President Biden of the United States would be when he saw these news. If I were the President of the United States, I would be very angry. It's outrageous, it's simply organized and undisciplined, against you. And I want to say, because of these factors, then, there was riots in France. Don't you think I'm a bit of a dog? If you think that way, I understand you, because you may not connect some things. After the riots in France this time, I saw many articles analyzing the causes of the riots in France. Those articles are very well written, knowledgeable, logical and well informed. Some analyzed the factors of economic inequality, some analyzed the factors of political loss of trust, some analyzed the factors of cultural conflicts, and some analyzed the fact that the French have a tradition of rioting. The best I have seen written one of my articles started from Napoleon, from the French Revolution, and said that France has a long tradition of riots. Do these articles make sense? I think it all makes sense, and I learned a lot from these articles. However, these articles fail to answer the question. Why are the riots in France always related to Macron's idea of European strategic autonomy? In other words, the riots in France all happened when Macron was clamoring for European strategic autonomy. For example, the current riots are due to Macron's high-profile promotion of European strategic autonomy in the past few months. In addition, there has been a major riot in France in recent years, that is, the French Yellow Vest movement in 2018. In 2018, the Macron government planned to increase the fuel tax by 6.2%. The increase in fuel tax would naturally lead to an increase in oil prices, so there were riots in France. This riot started on November 17, 2018, and lasted until November 2019, almost on and off for a year. On the first day of the riots, 280,000 people took to the streets. This is the biggest riot in Paris, France, in 50 years. In the past 2 years, I have also read many articles. When analyzing why such riots occurred in France, what they said was very reasonable. But I just don't understand one thing, the Yellow Vest movement in France is because the people are dissatisfied with the increase in oil prices. Specifically, according to the French Minister of Transport Elisabeth Borne, the tax on diesel has increased by 7 cents per liter, and the tax on gasoline has increased by 7 cents per liter. It has increased by 4 cents per centimeter. Let's keep it simple, let's talk about 7 cents. There was a riot because the gas price had increased by 7 cents. An increase of 7 euro cents compared to the oil price of 1.5 euros at that time, was an increase of about 5%. Then I ask weekly. After the Russian-Ukrainian conflict broke out, gas and electricity costs across Europe, including France, rose ninefold. Have you heard of the French riots? There seemed to be sporadic disturbances, but they were basically negligible. Repeatedly emphasize, oil prices rose by 5%, riots, but gas and electricity prices increased by 9 times, reaching 10 times the original price. The increase rate reached 900%, nothing happened. Then why do you say this is? I saw articles that analyzed the reasons for the riots in France from multiple perspectives such as politics, economy, culture, and history, and I think they all make sense, but the problem is that when oil prices rose by 5% in 2018, those reasons existed, and there were riots, in 2022, when the price of electricity and natural gas rises by 900%, don't those reasons also exist? Then why not riot? One is that there will be riots if the price rises by 5%, and the other is that there will be no riots if the price rises by 900%, and the world will be peaceful. Then you say what? With my simple and uncomplicated comparison method, I can only refer to Macron's European strategic autonomy. In 2016, Macron began to mention European strategic autonomy. After he was elected president in 2017, he even loudly called for European strategic autonomy, so there were riots in 2018. Even a price increase of a few cents, a price increase of only 5%, riots. Then what? Then Macron learned to behave, and in the next few years he didn't say anything about European strategic autonomy. Especially after the Russian-Ukraine conflict broke out, he didn't mention the European strategic autonomy at all, and the Americans would fight if they wanted to. Although he also did a lot of work to prevent the war, he did not take a clear-cut stand against the United States. Especially after the war began, he enthusiastically supported the wise decision of the United States and followed the United States to provide strong military and humanitarian assistance to Ukraine. So far, the US has given Ukraine more than $30 billion in aid, while the EU, including France, has given Ukraine twice as much aid as the US, reaching more than 70 billion euros. In this case, because of the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, the European Union including France cannot buy cheap Russian natural gas, and can only buy American natural gas that is 4 times the domestic price in the United States, so the price of natural gas rises, which leads to an increase in electricity prices, natural gas, and the price of electricity has risen by 900%, but there are no riots in France, no riots. There is no other reason, because we firmly support the United States to provoke the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, so the price of natural gas and electricity have risen as a result. How could it lead to riots in France? Some friends may ask, where is this magical skill of the Americans? How did he achieve it? Let's think about the theme mentioned at the beginning of today's program, the internet. When Macron listens to the American language, if anyone calls for riots because the price of electricity has increased by 900%, your post will not be published, because those social media on the French internet are all American media. If you want to share your feelings about the 9-fold increase in electricity prices on the internet, this is probably the case. If you scold the United States, saying that the United States should not provoke the conflict between Russia and Ukraine and cause you to suffer now, then your post will not be published at all. Go up. If you watch the loopholes and send them out, causing adverse effects, your account will be blocked. Conversely, if you highly praise the United States for successfully provoking the Russia-Ukraine conflict, we can bear to raise the price of electricity and natural gas now, and we will share will and woe with Ukraine. Ukraine will fight to the last. Then, your post can be vigorously promoted by the platform, achieve a huge amount of reading, and maybe make a little money. Under these circumstances, how could there be riots? So we found that although France has a long tradition of riots since the time of Napoleon and the French Revolution, in today's France, riots are not riots, and there is still an invisible hand controlling them. This invisible hand is the United States. Those social media stationed on the French network. So, this time, once the internet was disconnected, the riots subsided immediately. If the internet was not interrupted, more than 600 people were arrested every day, but the riots could not be quelled. Am I saying that the scale is a bit big? I am 100% convinced that there must be friends who do not believe my reasoning. Some friends may say, if you analyze this way, you have to come up with some evidence, such as how those American social media on the French internet fan the flames of the French riots. I believe you only if you give an example. I think that netizens who can speak like this are all netizens who can think rationally, and I admire them very much. But unfortunately, I really can't give an example today. But I can give a similar example to let my friends feel. I can't tell you how the American social media fanned the flames of the French riots on the French network this time, but let me give an example in Cambodia, okay. Moreover, my example involves a very special person in Cambodia. He is Cambodian Prime Minister Hun Sen. It was at the time when France was rioting this time. On June 29, the review department of Facebook's parent company Meta claimed that Cambodian Prime Minister Hun Sen's Facebook account posted a video that threatened violence against the Cambodian opposition. It is recommended that Facebook delete this post by Cambodian Prime Minister Hun Sen and ban the Facebook account of Cambodian Prime Minister Hun Sen for half a year. Let's see what Cambodian Prime Minister Hun Sen said. Hun Sen criticized Facebook for long-term connivance of insulting remarks against himself and his family, and there are at least 20 fake Cambodian Prime Minister Hun Sen accounts on the platform, but Facebook does not deal with these things. In short, the video of Cambodian Prime Minister Hun Sen was deleted and the account was blocked, but those remarks that scolded the Cambodian Prime Minister existed normally, and the counterfeit account of Cambodian Prime Minister Hun Sen was operating normally. The reason is the same. Look at his reasons for blocking Hun. Senator Hun Sen's video has a threat of violence to the opposition. The Prime Minister of the country threatens the opposition on social media and says some hard words. Can you control it on social media? Conversely, those who insult the leaders and families of this country on social media, you don't care. What do you mean? Can't people on earth see it? So the Cambodian Ministry of Posts and Telecommunications issued a notice saying that they found through the review that the platform has long-term lack of supervision on issues such as fake accounts, personal privacy data leakage, collection of user information, and dissemination of false information. They also interfered in Cambodia's internal affairs. The representative of the book company in Cambodia was expelled. And from that day on, all cooperation between the Cambodian government and the private sector and Facebook will be officially stopped. Before issuing the announcement, Cambodian Prime Minister Hun Sen cancelled his official Facebook account. From this information, it can be seen that those social media platforms do have the problem of who to help whom and who to suppress. Even if they operate in this country, they may not be lenient to the leaders of this country. Alas, don't say that the internet is lenient. Many times they just suppress the leaders of this country, because they are afraid that the country will not be chaotic, because the current leaders of this country don't listen to them. We all know that Cambodia has long been an iron buddy of China and has no relationship with the United States. Applying this logic to France, that is, when the old handsome Macron clamored for European strategic independence, those social media would incite riots. Even if the fuel cost increased by 7 cents, that is, by 5%, he could still bring this riot was fanned. And when Macron followed the steps of the United States, supported the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, and supported Ukraine to fight to the last Ukrainian for the interests of the United States. According to the United States, even the price of electricity and natural gas in France increased by 9 times, 900%. France also rioted. Even France, which has a long tradition of riots and many political, economic, cultural, and racial conflicts, cannot be rioted. Finally, I simply answer a question that some friends have asked me for more than a year. I say more than a year because since the Russian-Ukrainian conflict broke out, my friends have been asking me this question continuously. That is, why is Europe so stupid? Why didn't Europe stop the conflict between Russia and Ukraine? Because the conflict between Russia and Ukraine brought great misfortune to Europe. Firstly, it lost Russia's cheap and convenient energy, and secondly, its own security environment became more severe. Russia originally wanted to get along well with Europe. Those who lived, turned out to be enemies now. Well, a point of view I want to share with my friends today is that Europe is not without understanding people, such as Macron, who is clamoring for European strategic autonomy. But if you want to be strategically independent, can you be strategically independent? As a European leader, if you want to be strategically independent, not be a vassal of the United States, and break away from the control of the United States, then your country will be in turmoil. If the turmoil lasts for a long time, will you still be able to keep your position as president? And I would say, it is still light. What is that heavy? Serious ones, such as making up a scandal for you and directly punishing you. Some friends may say, can you make up that scandal if you want? Please see this message. According to an article on the website of Rolling Stone magazine on August 29, 2022, two sources revealed that Trump had boasted to his closest aides that he knew intimate details of French President Emmanuel Macron's sex life, and that Trump also said he learned of the news through a briefing he received from U.S. government intelligence. The private details of the dignified French president's sex life are all clearly grasped by the American president. Is it still difficult to analyze some scandals from it? It depends on whether he is willing or not. If the two brothers are good, they will not analyze it. If the two brothers are not good, they will analyze it for you immediately. If you can't kill you by analyzing one, then analyze another one. If you can't kill you after analyzing two, then analyze another one. Nothing is difficult in the world, as long as you are willing to persevere. Under such circumstances, if you were the leader of any country in Europe, would you dare to say that you would not listen to the United States? So, don't say Europeans are stupid. Europeans have to pretend to be stupid. Like Macron, he has suddenly put his understanding on the table in the past few months, so he has been in bad luck. Let's look at Macron's performance next. Maybe he will restrain himself a lot. After all, the president must continue to be the president. If he fails to be the president, how can he implement his theory of European strategic autonomy? This is the current poor European power France, one of the 5 permanent members of the United Nations, a very clear-headed France who wants to engage in European strategic autonomy. It is so difficult for a country like France to achieve national strategic independence, but what about other countries in the world? The difficulty is even greater. Well, that's all for today. I am a writer and reader of the WeChat public account Jing Siumi. Think quietly, have me alone.